I was saying thank you to our bishop, who is our spiritual leader in Liberia. I want to say thank you to Rosemary and Karen for inviting me to talk about the situation, educational situation in Liberia. We've been blessed. We've been taught for the past 2 days about God and what He can do. Now we're going to look at a case study of one of the countries that we're in. But we must understand that there are similarities of the 10 sites in Africa that we are working with. So as I talk about Liberia, think about the countries that you're in, because they're not much difference. And then we come up with an idea how we can use classical education to improve the situations that we are faced with. We are not discounting what we're doing, but if you begin to do things the same way all the time, you get what? The same results. So how can we turn it around? So we're not criticizing what is happening and say, how can we improve it? So let's go with that mentality. I also thought about, because Africa is so political, we have to be very careful how we strategize and go in to our political leaders. I was asked to talk about a possible solution to this situation we're faced with using the Rafiki curriculum, using classical education. I want to move the word Christian a little bit, because certain part of Africa will be, wow, so what are you saying? But how do we accomplish our goal is phrasing it to get in, and once you're in and they see the result, there will be no complaint. But we'll go in the wrong way, we might not enter some of the places. Take that as we move. Let's look at Liberia specifically. She said, talk about the situation in Liberia. Education, it said, is free for all government schools. And now the present president has elevated that to the university level. And when that was done, we questioned it because we know we don't have the budget for it. But they said, let's do it. There was no study done, and we have free education at the government universities. Most of our schools lack adequate learning facilities. Most of the parents prefer sending the kids to private schools. So you see the importance of private schools. And many of us went to mission schools. I went to a Baptist school. The missionaries have done so much in education over the years because the government could not afford it. What kind of system do we have? We have the 6-3-3 system. 6 years of elementary, 3 years of junior high school, and 3 years of high school. What are some of the challenges faced with education in Liberia? And I say it's coming to Africa, but it's coming to the world, and especially here in America, having worked with the Georgia Department of Education for over about 18, 20 years with a program called Communities in Schools, bringing the community to the school. Because most time people just send the kids to school and expect a miracle to happen. And it cannot happen with all their involvement. So we have to understand that. We have overage enrollment in our school system. Many students do not go to school at the right age, which is 6. They stay home, they work, they farm, they do different things. I myself didn't get to school early. I got to school late because you have to do things around. So that's a major problem. We have a huge number of out-of-school children. Because I get to school late, psychologically I'm impacted, and so after I begin to have problems, I drop from school. My parents didn't go to school. There's no one to motivate me to stay in school. So you have a huge number of people who are dropping out of school. We have another major problem, what I call wasted government resources. You will see at one point I would tell you about the limited appropriation to education, but I'm talking about this point now, wasted government resources, because we have a large number of what we call ghost teachers and unskilled teachers on our payroll. What do I mean by ghost teachers? The name is on the payroll, but I'm working somewhere else. The name is on the payroll. I died a couple of years ago. So we are talking about government put money in. But again, it goes back to what I was saying yesterday, lack of proper system. We don't have system to check and find out who's working and who's getting paid for what they are doing. I've been with the education system for a long time. Before the war, I was one of the ministers in the Ministry of Education. So I know what's happening there. So if we're demanding funds from government and we are wasting money in there, you're not solving the problem. You're putting water in a bucket that has a hole. And many times in some of our African countries and developing countries, that's the problem we are having. Because we are not closing the hole, and we are not putting system in place, and we're wondering why we are failing. We are failing because we are not putting in plans. So that's a serious problem. Another problem is the whole idea when we talk about system, you have to talk about policy, plans, and strategies. You have to have a plan. You have to have strategies to implement the plan. And you must have an evaluation to find out whether the plans are being what? Implemented or accomplished. And if not, you have to revise it. So there were no strategies for some time. Now we're putting strategies. But the problem is monitoring. The next problem we have is collecting on-time data. You must be able to do an evaluation and report the results on time. Because if you don't report the results on time, what happens? You do the same thing. And you wonder why you're doing it, because you haven't gotten the results from the data you collected. But what happened? You have wasted money on collecting the data and not using it. So that's another problem you're creating for yourself. You have a disparity between urban and rural education. More money spent on the urban and less on the rural. And it's a serious problem in Africa and in third world countries. Because most of the rural schools are not accessible. They're out there, but how do you get to it or get to them? And sometimes it's because of the climatic condition. During the rainy season, you cannot get to certain parts of the area, so you say, leave them. But you leave them, what happened? They suffer. You can't get materials there, you can't get teachers there, and it's a problem. Now, we talked about the waste of government resources by the ghost teachers. But we've been putting pressure on government, and research has shown that if developing countries, third world countries, will spend about 20% of their budget on education, you will see the difference. And those countries who have done it can see the results. In Liberia in 2011, when I returned to Liberia, the bank asked me to go back. We were spending 12% of our budget on education. people try to justify that because of the war and the problem we're having. Okay, let's give them a couple of years and see. Still, we are not at 20. We are about 15 or 16%. So we cannot get the result that we expect. Because the research says if you spend 20% of your budget on education, you will see some result and move it up gradually. So that's a serious problem we are having. In terms of budget appropriation for the school system, we have poor learning outcomes, overage enrollment. Because of poor learning outcomes, because of the unqualified teachers in the system. We have the whole idea of the leadership gap. We've identified all of the problems in education, the unqualified teachers, teachers not paid, the ghost teachers on the payroll, the lack of policy and planning. But let's say if we put all of those things in place, we still have another problem. And that is poor administrators, the lack of leadership in the school system. Because you have county education officers, district education officers, but those people are not qualified to implement if you put in place the plan. So you see the problem. We identify a problem, then someone says, I want to help you. Do you have the people? No. You don't have the people to implement what you need to do. So that is serious. We have overcrowded classrooms, especially in the rural area. But that's not unique to Liberia. Even in America, in Atlanta, we had overcrowded classrooms when we were working in the inner city. Okay, but you have the money, you have the resources, you have the plan, so you can work, and we were working towards solving that. But for Liberia and most of the third world countries, it's tough. Everybody rushing to the city. I gave you a typical example. I say Monrovia was built for maybe 1 million people, and you have 2 million people there. And the facilities have not been improved. What do you have? Overcrowded classrooms, overcrowded hospitals, sanitation poor. So you have a lot of things to deal with when you talk about overcrowded classrooms. Now, many donor agencies have come to help us. World Bank, the EU, and all. And they have done a number of things to help resolve the problem. We build new schools, we try to repair the schools, but still, we go back. The problem I see here is I come and ask for assistance. I'm giving the assistant. When the assistant is finished, what do? I go back to the same because I don't have. So, in the process of assistance, we have to begin to put plan how to continue this system, something in place. If you don't have it, I gave you this money, you use it, and you go back. So we're not solving the problem. So it has to be changed. The whole approach will have to be changed. That's, if I give you this, show me how you will move for the next 5, 10 years. And monitor me that if you move for 5 years, I'll come back and help you. You have continuity. But we've jumped, we're back. We jump, we're back. We jump, we're back, and it's a problem. Why are schools failing in Africa and third world countries? Our parents are not involved in the education of the children. And there may be a reason in third world countries because they are busy. They're trying to survive. They're making farms. And even here in America, in the inner city, many of our parents just send the kids to school and expect the school to perform a miracle. No, it cannot happen. They may know that when the kids come back, they have to study, they have to do homework, they have to do things. You have to go to the school to find what are the problems, what's happening in the school. But many of our parents are not involved. Parent involvement is so important. As I said earlier, not enough schools. You have overcrowded schools. You don't have enough schools to accommodate the number of students. We're talking about increasing the number of students, and people are saying that education can make a difference. Many of us, I think Bishop can attest to, I can attest. Our parents didn't have the money. And most of the time, the parents don't have the money to send us to school. It's by the grace of God that someone saw this little boy or little girl and say, you can make it. I tell you an example. I gave you a scenario about when the Peace Corps started in 1960 under the presidency of President Kennedy. They came to Liberia. Little boy in my little city didn't have the support. Father died when I was about 5 years old, didn't know what to do. So I worked with the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps came and opened library. What we know about library? We know nothing but library. We're just going to school. So we used to go get the books and read and show how to read. And we didn't know that they told us certain time you used to bring the books back to the library. People would forget the books. So the Peace Corps employed me to go and select the books and bring it. And I was getting 10 cents a day after walking all around the town and getting the books to come back. But the Peace Corps motivated me one day. Was sitting down, I was cleaning the shoes and cleaning the house. He said, you know James Brown? I said, no, I heard about him. Who is he? He's a musician. He said, but you know, anything you put your mind to, you can succeed. James Brown started singing, and he shook hands with the President of the United States. And you can do it too, Albert. I never forgot that. Mr. Bringerson. I said, I will make it. And since I've been here, I've met 5 American presidents and shook hands with them because it was in my mind. And Mr. Bringerson and I are still in contact. The next thing is lack of technology. And we're talking about advancing our schools. Technology is zero. Even on the university level, it's a problem. We got to be with the time. I talk about low funding, lack of teacher education innovation, overcrowdedness. I talked about that. And what we have in Liberia now, we call Zogos. These are overgrown students who drop from school and they just roam the streets, smoking drugs. You'll be surprised. They live in the graveyards. In the graveyards. And when they cannot find the drugs, they open their vaults. They sleep in there. The bones, they take things from the cup and smoke it. What do you do with that group of people? And you talk about solving the problem. So these are some of the major problems we have. One problem that will resolve a little bit is that we had more male in school than we have female. Because in the tradition, the girl will find a husband. So don't go to school now. Take care of your mom and dad. But the boy will go to school. But when Ellen became president, the girl said, we can do it. And she encouraged them to come to school. Now at the university, we have more girls than male. We have more girls graduating than male, which is good. Very, very good. And they are playing major role in the government. It is a struggle getting good education in Liberia. But there are many problems that cause it. Bishop talked about the 14-year war, compounded by Ebola, then the epidemic. Many people left the country during the war. I left myself because it was life and death. People had to leave. Leave your house just as is and walk out. And that's what I did. Nothing. Live in refugee camp and try to survive to get out. So people just left the school system, left the government, and went abroad. So afterwards, when you start schools, what you had to do, volunteers had to come in. and say, I will help, I will do it. But when these guys found good jobs, they left. But as I said before, the ghost names stayed on the payroll. So it was good help, but it created a problem that we are faced with today. It said that, UNICEF has come. I said the World Bank have come. They have trained teachers. They have built new classrooms. They help us to revise the curriculum. But the basic problem, what happened thereafter? It's a serious thing we have to look at in third world countries. When these projects come and they bring all the money, what happened thereafter? If you don't have a plan in place, what happened? You may go back 3 steps. And it's a serious thing that we're having. We talk about the overage students and all of that. Now, the possible solution to help us, classical education. I told you, please excuse me if I move the word Christian. Because Africa, again, is very political. Christian education, oh, what about the Muslim? What about this? What about that? There will be big argument, and they suppress it. We're talking about classical education. And we know the impact that classical education done in the past. The emphasis is liberal arts, as you know. The grammar and the logic, verbal arts, arithmetic, music, mathematics. It has made a difference. The emphasis in our system is not that. We have to go back to that. Because long time, classical education was what was in Liberia. It was everywhere. That's what they were teaching. And it taught people how to think, how to reason. Many of our students are graduating from high school, but they cannot enter college. They are not qualified to enter college. When they face problem, they cannot solve the problem. They don't know. They memorize things and pip, that's it. So the importance of classical education help them to become more independent thinkers. And that's what we need for Africa. And the strategy will be to we're trying to create thinkers, people who will be able to discuss issues, reason issues, and communicate. Our students now cannot. And it's not only on the high school level, even the college level. So how do we introduce that in our system? Many of our students are going far ahead. It's difficult catching them. So let's start in the preschool. If you start in the preschool now, we have to sacrifice a number of years. But within 10 years, the new generation will make the difference. I'm not saying we should forget about the junior high and high school, but our concentration should be there and put some in this area. And after 10 or 12 years, you'll see a new generation of people who can discuss, who can argue, who can reason, and make the right decisions for change in our government. So I think classical education is the right thing for us to do. And I think many of us from the other African countries might have the same perspective. But our emphasis should be on the preschool. We can start in the elementary and other. Nothing wrong with that because it will make a difference. But we have to work with a new generation that over 10 or 12 years, these people will be the future leaders and that will make a difference in education. Now, how can a university assist? And there where we came in. When we met Rafiki, it was how can we get these teachers connected with the university? We had the C certificate, which is 1 year post-secondary, and the B certificate is 2 years post-secondary in teacher training. But we wanted a diploma and associate degree, and so they came to the university and asked us, how can we connect? We looked at the curriculum, we worked with them, and so the graduates from the Rafiki program, they graduate with our students through and to get a diploma to move on. We're also encouraging them that those that graduate can work within our schools, in the Methodist schools, so people begin to see the impact of the old teachers when we were growing up, the old teachers who taught you how to think, pronounce your words, and be a gentleman and be a lady, and not a zuko. So our emphasis there, as Bishop was talking about the conference and the pillows, we have 5 ourselves. But one of the most important is improving the quality of teaching and learning. And that's what we're doing. And we think we can do more working with our freaky, working with getting students into some of the teachers to practice in our schools, and also concentrating on pre-K, training teachers in the pre-K to make a difference. I will stop, and we can ask questions and discuss. I don't have all the answers. Some of you have heard what I was saying. You might come up with possible solution. Thank you very much.